In this example, I need to solve the following equation on the interval 0 to 360 degrees. The equation is 2 times the sine of x plus the cosecant of x plus 3 equals 0. What type of equation is this? It's a trigonometric equation, and it contains two different trig functions, the sine of x and the cosecant of x. Both of these are raised to the first power, so it's a linear trigonometric equation that involves two different trig functions. However, it's very important to note the relationship between these two trig functions. They are reciprocals of each other, since the cosecant of x is 1 divided by the sine of x. So we have two different linear trigonometric functions that are reciprocal functions. And the way we solve this type of equation is we use a reciprocal identity to write the equation in terms of one trig function. We multiply the resulting rational equation by the LCD, and then we solve the resulting quadratic equation in one trig function. So in our case, the reciprocal identity is cosecant of x equals 1 divided by the sine of x. So my equation up here is going to become 2 times the sine of x plus, instead of the cosecant of x, I'm going to write 1 over the sine of x plus 3 equals 0. So I've taken care of step 1. Step 2 says multiply the resulting rational equation by the least common denominator. So in this case, what is the LCD? I only have one denominator, so that is the LCD. It's the sine of x. As we cannot divide by 0, we have to make sure in our problem that the sine of x does not equal 0. So now multiplying every single term by the LCD of the sine of x, I get the sine of x times 2 sine x plus, now multiplying the fraction by the LCD, I'm going to turn my LCD into a fraction by dividing it by 1. So I have sine x over 1 times 1 over sine x. Then plus, don't forget the 3 also has to be multiplied by the LCD of sine x equals, and we also need to multiply any terms on the right-hand side by the LCD of the sine of x. So now I'm ready to simplify. On my first term, I have sine x times 2 sine x, which is 2 sine squared x, plus on my second term, the sine of x reduces, I just get left with 1 over 1, which is 1, plus 3 sine x equals 0 times sine x is 0. So now I've finished step 2, and I have a quadratic equation just in sine x. I'm going to write it in descending order. So I have 2 sine squared x plus 3 sine x plus 1 equals 0. So now I have to solve this equation. I need more room, so I'm going on to the next slide. Here is the quadratic equation I got on the previous slide. The numbers are small, so I'm going to factor by trial and error. Two things multiply together to give me 2 sine squared x. I need a 2 sine x and a sine x. Looking at the signs, multiply to a positive, that means the signs are the same. Add to a positive, that same sign has to be positive. Since my numbers multiply to 1, I just need 1 and 1. Foil it out in your head. Does it work? 2 sine squared x. Then 2 sine x plus 1 sine x gives me 3 sine x. 1 times 1 is 1. So this is looking good. 2 factors multiplied together equals 0. Set each of them equal to 0. So I have 2 sine x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. 2 sine x equals negative 1. Finally, on this one, dividing both sides by 2, I get sine x equals negative a half. And from the second factor, sine x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides, sine x equals negative 1. Now, don't forget, we have to check against our restrictions. Are these two okay? Yes, neither of them is sine x equals 0. So now we just go to the unit circle. When is the sine of x equal to negative 1/2? Remember, the sine of x is the y-coordinate of every point on the unit circle. Since the sine of x is negative, I need to be below the x-axis. So here is one value where the y-coordinate is negative 1/2. So that is when x equals 210 degrees. And also y is equal to negative 1/2 here when my angle is equal to 330 degrees. So there are two of my solutions. And now when is the sine of x equal to negative 1? That only occurs in one point on the unit circle. This is when the y-coordinate here is equal to negative 1. That is when x is 270 degrees. So there are three solutions to this trigonometric equation.